Hey everyone, it's Ron, and it's all done. Well, all the level design, it's all done. So yes, when we look at last week's to-do list, I did indeed finish level 10. Huzzah! Now I can focus on polish. So I thought I'd go over just how I made level 10. So essentially what I started off with is I just made a scribble, essentially, of the rough level path I wanted. And then slowly over time, I just kind of filled that in and tweaked it. And then I just kept continuing to tweak it more and more, hollowing out more of like the little craggy areas. And then I did the same for the second half of level 10, where I just again scribbled the shape I wanted it to go in, and then I just filled it in piece by piece until eventually the whole level was eventually constructed. And yeah, it turned out to be so smooth because I could treat each little section as almost its own kind of mini level. The path for level 10 is pretty much what it looks like. I'm just going upwards and downwards, gently following through the whole valley, and this is essentially a kind of mix of the ascent and descent, which is what I wanted level 10 to represent, because obviously the first half of the game you're ascending, the second half you're descending. So here we're gradually moving downwards towards the bottom of the craggy valley, which is I think what the name I'm going to call level 10. And yeah, it's pretty much what it looks like, and it's actually reasonably fun to play, at least I think. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the first half of level 10 and even the second half as well, where the level just kind of continues and you go upwards, so it's a mirror image pretty much of the other side. Yeah, it all looks good, and you can see here it's just following the path going upwards, and yeah, that's pretty much it. That final one, the final two, actually turned out to be quite a challenge because I was exhausting what I could think of to make. But essentially what ended up happening is I just ended up throwing in some breakable platforms, which I'll get into later, and that made the level feel a bit more interesting. And yeah, and then he climbs up to the very, very top of the level, and then he exits, and the whole thing is actually contained in a gigantic cold area, but I thought that was a bit messy to show for the path. So I just thought I'd quickly go over breakable platforms. These were actually implemented last week, but I just didn't have a good place for them to be in the devlog. So the footage you're seeing here is from level 9, the Icy Tower, which is where they're introduced. And essentially you can see here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the player to decide when they want to break the platform, so they get to choose how they descend whilst also dodging a gauntlet of different obstacles. And I think level 9 actually turned out really well. It took forever to make, which is why last week I was only able to make one level, and it was relatively just the same size as level 7 and 8. But yeah, designing everything around this new mechanic of getting the player to decide when they fall, that was actually quite difficult and required a lot of reworking and a lot of different level iteration. But I think it came out quite well in the end. So what to do next? Well, obviously the first thing I want to do is I want to have a proper title screen. I've had enough of my placeholder one where you just push enter. I would like to have resume, new game, settings, and quit. I think that should be reasonably quick to implement, but we'll see. Then I think a pause menu will be in order. So another thing which I think will really add to the game is death transitions. It's really important to give the player a moment to stop and consider exactly why they just failed. The constant restarting, which I have at the moment, where it just snaps back to the previous checkpoint, is kind of okay, but really the player should be given more feedback on what just happened. And in a similar vein, I think it's really important that I have transitions whenever a player interacts with what's called a door object. Essentially, this is when the player finishes a level, or when they transition in between two different sections of a level. Currently, it just, again, snaps to either the title screen, the next level, or the next part of the level. And realistically, it's better if I have a little animation that plays. So yeah, it's their menus and their corresponding functions. So essentially title menu, pause menu, and saving and loading combined with transitions between different sections of the game. And yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going to be working on. It doesn't sound like much, but I think it might take me a while. So we'll see how much of this I get done next week. That's pretty much it. So, as always, thank you for watching, guys.